create the overarching broad legislative and regulatory framework for this to occur. There's already also huge technology that exists, and I have been in discussions with one of the large players in the fuel space, Sasol, who have the capacity and technology to be able to start moving quite determinedly into the biofuel sector. And it is one of the issues that we're working with the sugar sector to move towards. And I think that we would need to fast track the overarching regulatory and legislative platform in order to finally allow that particular sector to go through. I think, as Minister Tau said earlier, the difficulty is we've had to sign an NDA with the United States of America on these negotiations, and obviously this means that it's very difficult to go into broad detail. But I certainly think, responding to some of the trade and tariff issues, this is a broad, generous, and open offer that I think meets the ambition criteria. And I think if one was to look at this through the trade and tariff perspective, I think this offer represents something that would be good for the United States and also good for South Africa. And I certainly hope that, well, we certainly hope that it will be received in this way in the United States. Obviously, the demands, as I've said already, both in Minister Tau and I's meeting with the US Trade Representative, as well as our meeting at the White House, the focus was on the trade and tariffs. It was not on domestic policy issues, outside of obviously what everybody saw in the public arena in the Oval Office, where rural safety was raised quite sharply. And obviously we've taken heed of that and are working together, both Agriculture and the Police Portfolio Committee, to look at what measures can be in place to improve rural safety so that we can provide that satisfaction on that issue. But certainly in the other meetings, the issues were focused very sharply on tariffs, trade, and ambition. And we have tried to respond to that. Obviously, there have been other interlocutors that have emerged on the scene who have different views and have said there's other things. And obviously, these were not formally raised with us, certainly in those two formal engagements. So our focus in this offer responds to those trade things. As I said in my initial remarks, there are perhaps other issues, but DIRCO and those departments are going to have to deal with those through the channels that are established between South Africa and the United States to perhaps explain some of those issues, perhaps indicate what we're doing to resolve some of those issues. But that's above Minister Tau and my pay grade, I'm afraid. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Ministers. Colleagues, I'm going to take one final round in the room. And if we do have space for one or two more questions from the WhatsApp line, then we'll go ahead. Let me not prejudice anybody at the back there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, this is a big round. 5, 6. Okay, 6 questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's Wikanyo, MDN TV. I only have one question for the Minister of Agriculture. I don't know if you have already answered or explained the matter regarding the steps that have been taken to protect the perishable agricultural exports that are at risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2.
Thank you very much. My name is Qiniso from Creative Qiniso Online Media. I have two questions. The first question I just would like to ask from the Agriculture Department as well as DTI. Do we have any plan B or C negotiations against the Donald Trump tariff? Maybe you're gonna say you withdraw the exploration of land. Do we have any plan C, B, or G on that, or that is not touchable? May rather the tariffs go on. Then my second question is that after hearing that the rural areas or the agricultural areas is doing good, but my question is that do we have any plans or do we have any previous practice we have done to improve the dignity of a rural person? Because it look as we go around to the rural areas, or there are even jokes about people from the rural areas, and you can even see the influx of rural people. They try to come to the urban areas to improve their dignity. Do we have any plans to improve the dignity of these people? Because I can hear that there is good production that is happening there as we are speaking right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Susumi Maizumi from Japanese daily newspaper Asahi. You've already mentioned about Japan, but this month, Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD, will be held in Japan. And how does South Africa government intend to develop relations with partners such as Japan during this difficult time, especially negotiating with the US? And as you know, actually, half of grapefruits in Japan are coming from South Africa. So we already have like some kind of infrastructure about our trade. So how do you want to expand this relationship? And if you expect anything from Japan, please let me know.
Thanks, Tri.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Francis Logamachate from Progressive Independent News Agency. Ministers, will you say these South Africa-US trade negotiations are the most difficult ones, based on the fact that you don't seem to be getting to the ground and having some agreements that did end up going to the situation, or the popular phrase, stable but critical? And the second question is, as part of diversification, what are the new trading negotiations considered for China, and in which, which products will those be? Thank you.
Thanks, Fo.
I think I was number 4. Good morning, Katlego Logodi here from the SABC. The first one is clarity on the team, the new team that is being put together. Can you just give us a sense of how are they, the makeup of this team? Are they going to be inclusive of those from DIRCO as well, as we look at approaching these issues? And did I get it right that this afternoon you will be submitting this new deal? Maybe clarity on that indeed this is what will be happening today. Again, Jan Togoso asked about the export support desk and the companies that are already receiving support right now. Can you please just get further clarity on the industries that have been racing to the desk to try seek for support? Are we seeing a pattern of some sort? Which industries would find themselves vulnerable right now, looking at those that have already approached the export support desk? And clarity as well on the BRICS. We know very well that there was a 10% that was threatened to be imposed on the countries that are members of the BRICS cohort. We are a country that is member of the BRICS. Has that kicked in, this new deal that is going to be presented? Does it factor that in terms of how you'll be navigating that one as well? Thank you.
Thanks.
It was just an addition to.
I have to
just on the
discipline colleagues.
Just we having the deal, but what does that mean? The tariffs have already kicked in. That was just it to add on to his question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mpho.
Mpho from CCTV. I just wanted to find out, what is the department doing to diversify exports to alternative markets?
Okay, I think that one's been covered already. Last one?
Yeah, it's just the clarity as well. I've heard from ENCA. Just on maybe any timelines, have the US committed to maybe relaxing the tariffs if they give the go-ahead to the revision of what you're going to propose this afternoon?
Okay, bit of a mixed bag this round. Let me ask Minister Steenhuisen first this time. If you can come up and clarify some of the issues around the agricultural and rural areas, and the team as well on your part, and then some diversification as well. And then Minister Tau, you'll cover the rest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On rural infrastructure, obviously that is the remit of the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform under Minister Nyonso. But we see agriculture as a major player in that particular rural dignity, because dignity comes through work, employment opportunities, and business creation. And that is why we are so fundamentally invested in growing the agricultural footprint in rural areas. We see it as the primary means of creating employment and opportunity in rural areas, and to help build up that infrastructure. The challenges we face, of course, also exist in the COGTA space, water, sanitation, roads, and the like, which are a huge issue in those rural areas and are becoming an issue for the agriculture space as well. The quality of roads, being able to move agricultural goods and services. I had a heartbreaking story of a group of women dairy farmers in KwaZulu-Natal whose dairy depot doesn't come to collect from them anymore because the roads have got too bad for their trucks, and they're not prepared to lose the money on tires and damage to their vehicles. And this means that those ladies lose an outlet for their milk. And that's just one example. So the President has already announced through Operation Vulindlela 2.0 that it is now going to extend to local government. Minister Kondongwana has also, through National Treasury, started to embark on a process of ring fencing, particularly on the services at a municipal level, to ensure that a portion of that money raised through electricity, through water reticulation sales, is reinvested into infrastructure to ensure that we don't have the outages and the like there. It was certainly interesting at Mpho this year that it's usually crime that's number one on the list that's raised with me. This year at Mpho, it was largely around infrastructure. So we're working together with the Department of Rural Development, with COGTA, as well as Operation Vulindlela and agriculture. I think that there's a lot more synergy that we can find in ensuring that we ensure that those rural areas have the infrastructure that they need to support the economic growth that we're trying to stimulate and create in those areas. And of course, that then leads into safety. And I've already announced and spoken about the initiatives by the Department of Agriculture, or the Agriculture Portfolio Committee, and the Police Portfolio Committee had a historic first engagement around farm attacks, rural safety, and the like, that affect our biggest stakeholders in those areas, our farmers and farm workers. And certainly from my department, they're our most important stakeholders, and protecting them is obviously very important. In terms of Japan, I attended a trade visit with the Deputy President. I met the Minister of Agriculture in Japan, very impressive, deeply impressive young minister, and we have had a good discussion about how we could improve. Japan is a very important growing market for us in wine, citrus, but also from grains. And we are in the midst of negotiating a deal around maize, which Japan is looking for. And I see Japan as a huge growth opportunity for us going forward. It is obviously difficult negotiating when the issues that you're negotiating are not necessarily about trade and tariffs. And that obviously complicates things. And I think that's also why we've had this particular situation. But I also think there's a matter of volume and scale. As I said, South Africa is a very small exporter to the United States in their global terms. And there are countries lining up outside the USTR's door to try and get their deal on the table. And so that does complicate the timelines. And perhaps, in other countries where you're dealing with trade negotiations, it's generally one-on-one and there's a focus. Here we've got a whole lot of countries scrambling to the USTR to try and avert tariffs and the like. And so I think there is a bit of congestion, and that does complicate the timeline somewhat. So I don't think it's a function of us sitting on our hands, as some have alluded to. It's a function of the fact that there are processes that we are required to follow, and that other countries are also going through these same processes, and so we would need to do that. In terms of diversification, China is obviously a huge opportunity for South Africa. A 1.6 billion population, that's a lot of mouths to feed, and a lot of demand for agricultural products. I can today share that after the last visit that I attended with the Deputy President in China, and our visit as the Agriculture Minister to the GACC, we were given the protocol for stone fruit. Significant in a number of ways. It's the first time that China has negotiated more than one product with us at a time. It's usually they focus on one fruit type. We got 5 in this particular deal: stone fruit, apricots, peaches, nectarines, plums, and prunes. These are obviously, we hope to conclude now this protocol on the sidelines of the G20, the Agriculture G20 next month, and that will then open the way for stone fruit from South Africa into China. The next mission thereafter is cherries and mangoes, and we are already advanced in terms of the negotiations there, and I think that would open huge opportunities for us to be able to get those particular products there. Minister Tau has indicated that the low-hanging fruit for us, pardon the pun, would be able to redirect citrus that's going to the US now into the European Union. But that is going to require a negotiation in order to try and get around the citrus black spot issue, which we do not see as unsurmountable, and we believe that with the right phytosanitary safeguards, there's no reason whatsoever that the European Union should balk at being able to accept the citrus. Even with the 30%, there are certain agricultural producers who feel that they would still remain competitive in that environment. Particularly, I was with one of the largest avocado producers in South Africa last week. I went to visit them up in Limpopo province. They believe even with the 30%, we can still compete effectively on avocados, for instance, given the price that our competitors are landing them at, that we can still compete even with that. So what they're looking for is for us to continue the engagements around market access. And we will obviously continue those processes as through Dr. Jafta in Washington to try and conclude those opportunities so we can see further growth going there. I just want to make one interesting point about BRICS. If one looks at the US's trade with Brazil, India, China, and other countries in the BRICS, it certainly dwarfs anything that we do. And so I don't think that it would be fair or right to penalize South Africa for being part of a regional bloc like BRICS, which obviously is our prerogative as a country. As I said, the US certainly does trade with all of those countries. Some of them have obviously been slapped with far more punitive tariffs than we have. India sitting at 50%, and Brazil sitting at 50%. And obviously, there are global dynamics now around trade that are going to make these waters more difficult to navigate. But as the old saying goes, you can't be sailors that curse the sea. We have to navigate the seas that are now in front of us. And this is perhaps the new way things are going to be going forward. And I think that it's even more incentive to do what we can to improve the relationship with the United States and to retain access to their markets. I think it's in their interests as well to have a good relationship with the most industrialized and largest economy on the continent, but also to make sure that we're not putting all our eggs in one basket and that we are looking determinately for other markets. China, Japan, the Middle East, South Korea, these are huge opportunities, I think, that remain untapped for us as South Africa. And perhaps this crossroads that we're at now with this particular tariff situation is now even more of an incentive for us to move more determinately towards securing these new markets for South Africa's goods, not only in agriculture. Obviously, I'm biased to agriculture, but Minister Tau's also got lots of things he likes to sell around the world, and that diversification, I think, is now going to become the imperative of certainly both of our departments in the short to medium term. Thank you.
Maybe to pick up directly from where Minister Steenhuisen left off, With regards to diversification, we've also agreed in Cabinet that we need to invoke the entire Cabinet in these processes of diversification. The reality is that the DTIC on its own, or the DTIC agriculture, and let's say the minerals and petroleum resources on our own would not be able to reach all markets at the same time. So part of our reality is that we kind of have to invoke all members of the National Executive to be part of the pool of people, and we would be able to provide the necessary technical support behind that pool of people. And we think that that would be a much more valuable thing to do than to expect us, as these departments, to be all over the show all at the same time. It's extremely, extremely difficult to reach all these markets. And I'm answering both the question with regards to diversification and also what markets are we targeting. Of course, we indicated that we have engaged with the EU. We had a summit with the EU earlier this year. We agreed to develop a clean trade and investment partnership. We're in the process of finalizing that partnership with the intention that it would be signed off in November at the BRICS summit between the two presidents. So we're working very hard to ensure that we're able to implement that. We also saying that where there are areas of, if you like, disagreement, and we made an example of the citrus black spot, that we should be able to resolve this on the basis of bilateral engagements with the EU, and would be pursuing that strategy. We've been to China recently. We've given them a list of the top 100 products. We've varied that list to now include more industrial products. We've presented a proposal with regards to specific areas of cooperation, and we've had commitments from the Chinese to invest in particular industries. So certainly we're talking to them. As indicated, we will be led by the president at TICAD in Japan, and the engagements on TICAD would also include bilateral engagements between the president and the prime minister at that side, including, of course, bilateral engagements with our respective counterparts. We intend to sign a set of MOUs at the back of historic trade relations with Japan. So it is a market that we're targeting. We have also received confirmation that we would have the Joint Economic Commission with Saudi Arabia in the second week actually, of September. And linked to that would be an engagement we'd also have with the UAE, so that we're able to open not just those two markets, but the broader GCC countries in the Gulf. So it's an area of focus that we're working on to ensure that we're able to deal with it. I should say that we had intended to include Qatar in this visit that would go into the Gulf, but the agreement now is that Qatar would be in South Africa and intend to have a visit to South Africa in end of November, early December. So rather than, in fact, including them in this round of engagements, we should be able to engage with them at the back of the direct discussions and visit that they would be having in South Africa at the end of this year. I'm just giving you a flavor of some of the markets. There are markets that historically we've had relations with, but the trade relations have not been very, very solid. And we're now extending engagements with those markets. Those would include Brazil and broader the Mercosur countries. We've targeted that. We've also targeted countries in the Asian region. So there are countries in the Asian region that we're targeting. And we've already said Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand would be amongst the countries that we're targeting on the basis of the engagements that we're currently having. We will continue to expand our engagements with various regions and countries. So I just thought I should give a flavor of the sort of work that we're doing on the diversification issues and enhancing market access. But we shouldn't underplay the importance of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. In fact, you know, when we talk about export and having China, the EU, and the US as our biggest trading partners, it is on the basis of, in fact, them either as a bloc, the EU, or China and the US as individual countries. But if you look at our trade basket, Africa is the most important. It remains the most important market for South Africa. There's a Council of Ministers in September that would be looking at how we enhance the work that we're doing at the back of the AfCFTA, and we place particular emphasis in that regard. And sometimes you might not always relate to it because it is not big ships that move off ports that go into our neighboring countries. But you've got very established brands, retail brands that are there, and at the back of those retail brands would be the products that are on the shelves, a lot of which come from South Africa. So in reality, this is a market that we consolidate. And the discussions that we've been having with our colleagues on the continent is how do we ensure that we're able to address what has been some of the difficulties in trade that we have experienced. What are some of the issues that impacted investors in certain instances? And there are stories that we know about companies that suddenly get increased tax requirements, increased regulatory requirements, and so on, that present as a challenge, but also new opportunities, you know, expanding access to products that historically we have not imported from our neighbors, including, amongst others, oil and gas, as opportunities that we have not fully exploited. So optimizing the work that we're doing in Africa is extremely important for all of us. Any plan B and C, we have so far engaged on the trade negotiations. There's no cabinet decision that says that we would want to review national policy or national legislation. So there's no cabinet decision that says so. And I do think that as South Africans, it is important that we reaffirm our own commitment to our own sovereignty as a country. The ability to make decisions on national policy and the direction that we're taking as a country is an extremely important point. And when countries engage us and say, we need you to change your national policy, we should not suddenly think that that constitutes a plan B and C, because then it means that before Parliament passes laws, it must consult another country. It's not a very sustainable thing to do as a country. So we need to preserve our sovereignty as a country. So to the extent that there would be engagements, this policy impacts trade, creates non-tariff barriers and so on. These have been matters of trade engagements and negotiations. Because we also go to other countries and say, yes, you have created access to our products, but you've got non-trade barriers that make it difficult for us to trade with you. So our products can't access your market because of these regulatory mechanisms that you have in place. And we engage with those as trade-related matters. But to the extent that we say we're placing our ability to make sovereign decisions as a country, I think would be a high-risk decision to take. Are these the most difficult negotiations? Let's just say certainly unprecedented. Certainly unprecedented because historically you engage in negotiations at the back of globally established rules of engagement governed by the World Trade Organization. And those would include, amongst others, that tariffs would be governed by WTO rules. You would have tariffs in line with what would be most favored nations, and these nations would collectively qualify for a particular tariff under particular circumstances, and that what you extend to one, you'll extend to the other unless you have a free trade agreement or an economic partnership agreement, and that you don't take arbitrary and unilateral decisions. That book has been put on the side for now, and all of us are grappling with the reality of what we're dealing with. I certainly think that it would be a subject that we would engage at G20 amongst others, but it would certainly be a topic of engagement when we get to the Ministerial Council that would be held in Cameroon in March next year, which is the regular WTO Ministerial Council that's held. It certainly would be a topic to say, given these changed circumstances, what does this mean in terms of the World Trade Organization, the rules of engagement, and how do we adapt? And countries have to apply themselves. We certainly as a country have started to apply ourselves to what our contribution to that discussion would be. The expansion of the team, I should say that the team ultimately when put together includes the presidency. We're also on the ground in the US right now. It includes the Department of Agriculture, it includes DERCO and the DTIC, and to the extent that there are particular areas of interest, we agreed that in fact we need to involve and include the Department of Minerals and Petroleum Resources a lot more actively, because issues have been raised with regards to gas, oil, critical minerals, and so on. So certainly the departments would be expanded to include all those that are affected, and we get input from all of them. Will it be submitted today? Yes, it will be submitted today. As I said, we had engagements with them through our own representative who was there, the Chief Director for Bilateral Trade, who is in the US right now. We've dispatched him there to stay there until certain issues have been resolved, and we've had to have people acting in his stead in the department so that we're able to deal with these issues. The advantage that we have with him is that he was also trade representative in the US, a trade attaché rather, in the US. So he's got direct knowledge of the market, the issues, the environment, and so on. So he is there dispatched since the beginning of last week, and he is engaging actively, both at the level of the administration, but also as Congress resumes, it would also be at the level of the Hill, if you like, Congress, that would be able to engage with Congress and should be able to get value from those engagements. And to the extent that we would need to dispatch even the directors general whenever necessary, the ministers whenever necessary, we stand ready to dispatch all capacity that we have at the point that we need to dispatch that. But as I said earlier, we're also dispatching this capacity all over the world to open certain markets. But I don't think that there could be any doubt about the importance that we attach to our continued trade and relationships with the United States. With regards to the 10% BRICS tariff, it has not been presented as a direct option yet. It was mooted rather. I would have preferred muted, but mooted rather, as a point that could be under consideration, but it hasn't been put officially on the table. Therefore, we have not factored it in as a number. At this point, we're dealing with the numbers that the US has published. I think, Camille, I've covered everything, and Minister Steenhuisen had earlier covered the other issues. Thank you very much.
Ministers, thank you very much. I am going to abuse you for 2 more questions. I'm going to allow one from WhatsApp. If there's any new questions, Pumzile, on WhatsApp, one. And I'm going to give my colleague in blue here the other one. And then that's it.
We have questions from Gwena Mashale from the Sowetan, who asks, how will the localization support fund be financed? What accountability mechanisms are in place? How will the block exemption for exporters be implemented and regulated fairly? And what safeguards exist to prevent anti-competitive behavior?
Thank you.
Good morning. It's Ndando Tsukwana from Bloomberg News. Just wondering, Minister Tau, if the DTIC has given consideration to raising the import tariffs it levies on India and China for the auto sector, just to stem or prevent flooding into the South African market, given the fact that the US tariffs does threaten to weaken demand for our South African autos. And then just one for Minister John Steenhuisen. The stone fruits that you mentioned are, have been granted access to the Chinese markets. Just want to confirm that will be tariff-free. Thank you.
Thanks. Minister Steenhuisen, if you can take the one that's been directed at you, and Minister Tau, the other two, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Localization Support Fund exists already and has been financed through certain competition agreements that have led to investment in localization. So some of the public interest investments have gone into the Localization Support Fund. It functions as an NPO and as a governance system, and we have a mechanism of engaging with them with regards to the work that they are doing. And in this instance, we have engaged them to ensure that we're able to bring those resources and capability on board to implement the mitigation measures. But it's not limited to those. It also includes broader localization issues that need to be pursued and implemented. The block exemption will be published for public consultation, and the final design and conditionalities attached to the block exemption would come out of the public consultation process. But as we publish, we would indicate what would be covered in the block exemption, so we're not giving companies carte blanche. And we're also cognizant of the response on the other side, because remember, our trade partners would also be concerned that, in fact, and if we don't do it well, it could be perceived as enabling collusion. In this instance, it is about consolidating the efforts that we can put together to address the challenges that we have, but we also have to protect the competition environment in our country. So when we publish, those safeguards would be put in place, and of course industry and stakeholders would be able to contribute to that discussion. With regards to Chinese and Indian auto, it is a discussion that we're currently having with the intention, in fact, of taking a less punitive approach, but rather taking a more proactive approach of getting some of those products manufactured in the country. You know that bike is already in the country. Many of them have expressed interest of establishing in the country. They are making contributions to the process currently underway to review the APDP, which is the policy framework on the automotive industry that we've put in place. It's currently under review, and they are making contributions in this regard. We engage directly with both their countries, but also individual companies about this and measures that would put in place. Could the measures include tariff measures? I'm not going to preempt what the actual decision is going to be in this regard. I think we'll get to that point at the point at which we finalize the revised automotive development program, so to say, so development program. So it is our intention to accelerate the policy development process and related instruments in the implementation of the APTP. Who am I disadvantaging now? Thank you. So yeah, I think I've covered the issues around the auto. I should say that we spoke about the Chinese, but in the next 2 weeks we'll also be engaging with both Japan and India. You would know that Suzuki has had a great presence in the country right now, and we will be visiting, and they're exporting from India. So whilst it's a Japanese company, they're exporting from India into the South African market. So we'll be touching both the parent company and the company that's exporting into the South African market to see how we can cooperate and collaborate on the basis of seeking to attract them as an investor into our country. So we're not wielding the stick as a starting point. We start with the carrot and then balance it with the stick. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So the stone fruit protocol was given to us by the GACC. It's going through our processes domestically, FOSAD and our phytosanitary department as well. And I said we'll hopefully sign that at the sidelines of the G20 Agri next month, which I think will be a significant step forward. As it relates to tariff-free, we are still obviously, after the announcement by the Chinese, are still exploring the avenues of the tariff-free and what it means and what the implications are. But obviously, this is a product that the Chinese really want from us, and it certainly, even if there is a tariff, it would likely be an incredibly favorable one, much like the other tariffs that they have provided us with. We're obviously continuing to engage China on other tariffs, things like wine, etc., and what the implications of the zero import tariff would be for those particular sectors as well. But we're still obviously, I think, through DTRC and the other and DERCO are still processing what it actually means around the zero tariff regime, and obviously we'll hope to make an announcement of it into the future. Thank you.
Ministers, colleagues, thank you very much for a great briefing. We're going to allow the ministers to get back to work so that the headlines are not unkind to them tomorrow, that they were spending time in front of the media instead of working. But no, unfortunately, there are pre-existing engagements that the ministers have to get to. So we'll allow them to take leave with their teams, and then colleagues can leave thereafter. Thank you very much. No, it's a closed meeting. Thank you.
Oh yeah. But I did it. It's a grand man.